Welcome. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So I will call to order the October 24th, 2024 meeting, hybrid meeting of the Concord Transportation Advisory Committee. It's 9:31 by my clock here. So first start with a roll call. Nick,
Here.
Laura. Is
Here.
Okay. Mariana,
Here.
Ellen,
Here.
and myself. Okay, so we have a quorum. I believe Phil is gonna join online. Dan can't make it. Okay, so the first item on the agenda is to approve minutes. I believe that you got a copy of lately drafted minutes that I put together for the June 20th meeting. Trying to catch up with things. Does anybody have changes? I have one typo where near the bottom of the first page, Mimi Graney's last name is spelled with an extra I that shouldn't be there, but other than that, I think it looked okay to me. Hi, Phil. Good morning.
Good morning, Phil.
Can you hear us?
You're muted.
You're muted. Just check your audio.
There we go.
Beautiful. Okay, great. So I was just saying that a set of draft minutes for June 20th, I think, catching up were distributed, and there's one typo I noticed. Did anybody else have changes or suggestions?
No, they're good. Good by me.
Okay, then I would entertain a motion to accept the minutes,
I move that we accept the minutes of
June 20.
June 20.
Yeah.
As written, as corrected.
Second.
Second, okay, Nick,
Aye.
Laura?
Aye.
Phil,
Aye.
Mariana,
Aye.
Ellen,
Aye.
myself, aye. Okay, so that's
I
unanimous.
don't think I was there, but I might have to.
You're
abstain.
still, you're still.
No, you don't need to abstain.
Okay,
The reason being, just for everybody knows that
Okay.
if everybody abstained from at the end, when terms end and people go off,
Mhm.
it's like the next meeting, they may not be able to approve the
Oh,
the minutes at
yeah.
the next meeting
Yeah.
if there's never enough people to approve them.
Got
So,
yeah,
that's why you are able to
Some-
vote even though you weren't there.
good to know.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So a couple notes. First of all, Nick had volunteered to prepare the minutes of the last meeting from the posted video, but the video is not posted yet, as far as we can tell.
Yeah, I was
So-
expecting someone to send me a link the way they did
Yeah,
the previous time.
I apologize. I should have followed up on that
Okay.
earlier. But so when those are posted, you can.
No, we can send you the link.
Oh, okay, okay,
Yeah, send me the link because that'll jog me. That would be good.
thanks. And the other thing is, if we go alphabetical order, then I think if it's Phil's turn to do the minutes for this meeting, if that's okay.
Well, I'm gonna have to leave the meeting early. That's the issue. So
Yeah,
if I can
but-
swap with somebody.
It's
Or
fine.
I'll do it from I can do it from the tape. So,
Oh,
whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Do you want to
no,
swap?
they can do it from the tape. No,
Okay, do it from the tape.
okay,
And if there's a problem, let me and Elizabeth know.
okay.
Okay, and we'll try to get you the link sooner rather than later. Is that okay? There, if it's gonna get,
No, it's no
instead of
problem.
wait, because I've always been doing it from what's posted. All right, I think that takes care of minutes. Okay, chair's report. So just briefly, I wanted to mention that at the recent chair's breakfast, they actually did the courtesy without my asking of printing out and distributing paper copies of tax goals and actions document
Okay.
and the thoughts on public transit. And I also reviewed again the my presentation and visit to the Economic Vitality Committee, and especially discussed questions about the importance potentially of public transit. And I'm not sure if I had mentioned it to TAC before, but Economic Vitality Committee is doing a survey of businesses, and Nick has offered to give them some questions that might relate to gauging support for public transit. Do you have anything to say about that, Nick? while we're on the topic, you need to unmute.
Yes, I sent Mike Lawson 5 questions, actually, 2 of them related to public transit and its usefulness for employees of the businesses, and the other questions were related more to trying to determine if there's any interest in a delivery service among the businesses.
Okay, so later on the agenda is talking about collaboration with committees, so if there's more to say, we can go then. I think that's the main point there. Phil, you had suggested that it would be, you'd be able to give us an update on some recent activities for the Safe Routes to School program, and also maybe briefly discuss what opportunities there are for state support going forward. So unmute yourself. And
Are
if
you going to
have-
the next agenda item? Because I had something.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Sure, go ahead, Nick.
Just as part of the chair's report, could you, or for the committee's benefit, could you or Elizabeth give an update on what's happened with the personnel recs and what that means going forward? Specifically, the hiring of a planner for transportation?
That's not moving forward.
Right, and how is it gonna be covered? I just want the committee to hear.
I'm not entirely sure.
Okay,
For now, you're stuck with me. Whether
it's a good
the,
stuck.
whether the new director takes over some element of this, I don't know. That hasn't been decided.
Right, but what is underway right now, right, is a search for a director of planning and land management under the town manager.
I believe it's
or
gonna be
even
community development.
community development. Okay,
Oh, that's even better.
I think
That's a
it's gonna
better
be
term. That's
I
great.
think it's
Okay.
gonna be the community development director. I think the whole name of the building's gonna change to the Department of Community Development.
okay, and it's going to,
I love it.
and planning will be part of that.
It'll be no different than it is
Okay.
now.
Okay,
It'll,
I
planning
saw-
division, natural resources division, building division, and health division.
okay, so sort of what Megan has been doing temporarily, maybe is going to be, yeah, okay.
So I'm afraid I don't remember where I saw this yesterday, but there was something indicating that that maybe that position or a different position was going to be responsible for gathering all community input for everybody. Maybe I misread that, but it sounded like, oh, if anybody wants community input, this is where you go to. That's very different from what we've been doing, which is like individual committees having their own, methods for collecting community input.
So this position is, it's what Megan has been doing for the past year. And it won't be Megan anymore, and it'll be somebody else. So it doesn't impact, how committees operate.
In terms
Or-
of gathering data from the residents, that's still something we would do.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
Yeah, my understanding, it's a staff, staffing and organizational,
change,
kind of change here.
Yes.
Nothing to do with committees or what committees are doing.
okay.
correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, okay, then let's go to Phil. Phil, if you can, give us a quick picture of, what you had mentioned, some recent activities, and then discuss some funding.
Sure.
sources.
So Elizabeth, can you let me get the screen and I'll do a little
Can,
PowerPoint?
you can.
Okay, all right, so just bear with me for a second. Not it. Whoops. Sorry, guys. Here we go. Okay. Can everybody see this?
No.
No, share screen.
Oh, do I have to share screen first?
Yeah.
Sorry,
Take your time.
don't do this all the time anymore. I forgot. how to do it. Okay, Zoom, right?
At least on my screen, if you put your cursor down there at the bottom, there should be a share screen button.
Yep, okay. Um, can you see it now?
It's, yes,
Perfect, yeah.
yes,
okay.
we can
Okay.
see it.
Okay, great. All right, so very briefly to recap, Massachusetts Safe Routes to School program works to increase safe biking and walking for elementary, middle school, and now high school students, which was included as a result of federal legislation a couple of years ago. The idea of the program is that it is a collaborative approach among various stakeholders, including the schools. In our case, it includes a parent and volunteer organization called Bike to School Concord. The other collaborators are the police department and the public library and Mothers Out Front, which is a nonprofit organization in the town. So the idea is to encourage kids to walk and roll, and the goal of the program is to make walking and biking safe. And in order to accomplish that, the state has funds available from the federal government to do that. So let's see if I can get the next slide. So as I said, there are various departments that have provided support. The police department has been a key player, so every event that the Safe Routes to School program puts on has police department support. We've also gotten support from the Public Works Department and planning staff to apply for a grant recently, and all of the activities are undertaken without cost to the town other than the allocated costs related to the staff time. So the idea of the program, and this is established through the federal legislation, is to encourage, to educate, to evaluate the school's ability to promote biking and walking as an alternate means of transportation to school buses, and in particular to individual individual cars. And when it comes right down to it, the stats are fairly clear that as a result of the pandemic, school bus use is down and individual car trips are up to schools nationwide, and that includes Concord. So the idea of the program is to encourage people to do something different. So when the encouragement part is focused on part of my task as the cheerleader for this program in town is to work with the state people. A couple of times a year, they have a statewide event called Walk, Bike, and Roll in the fall, called I Walk in the spring. And the idea is that each school district will have a walk to school day. And statewide, I think there are something like 200 districts and over 1,100 schools that participate in the program. These pictures were taken this fall. As you can see in the right-hand picture, one of the police officers, Ron Holsinger, has been our champion on the police force, and Ron attends almost all the events. So this year, we had over 300 participants either riding their bikes or walking. The Metco students participated at the Alcott School by having kind of a walking bike train after they came off the bus. So they got to participate as well, which I thought was pretty important. The longest bike train starts at the Middlesex School. So if you can imagine, that's practically on the Carlisle line. It's almost 5 miles from the Thoreau school. And in order to get from that spot, the kids ride down Lowell Road, they come down Barrett's Mill Road. There are sidewalks on both of those roads, but getting across Route 2 is the challenge. And in order to address that, at least right now, we have police department escort. So the police bring a cruiser or two. Police officers stop traffic on Route 2. The kids process across Route 2. And Nick Papa sees them popping out on Baker Ave as they're making their way onto Main Street and then down towards the Thoreau School.
Yep.
The other element that's come up this year, which has been terrific, is that all of the school parent-teacher groups are now participating pretty actively. And my hope is that I'll put myself out of business and this will become a PTG activity as opposed to me being the cheerleader to help to make this program a sustainable program at the local level. So there'll always be somebody who will be a parent in a school who will be participating as the cheerleader. And the report for this year is no injuries, no problems, excellent weather, a little cold, but nice sunny day like today and a lot of smiles. So in addition to the bike to school events, the Thoreau School is taking the lead on arrival and dismissal and walk audits, which are specific steps that are planned with the Safe Routes to School staff. The result of that has been reports made to the schools and available to the DPW and the planning staff, detailing what the observations have been with respect to the Thoreau School neighborhood. The follow-up to that was an application for a Signs and Lines grant. This is a sort of quickie, low-dollar grant, that is based on the findings of the walk audit. And what we found in walking around the neighborhood was a lot of crosswalks have disappeared over time. They just went away. A lot of signs are old and not well placed. And because Route 62 cuts the Thoreau district into pieces, there are a number of places where it's just really not all that safe for a kid to walk or bike to school in the morning. And that's a bigger question, but at least in terms of the quickie grants, we can improve the signage, improve the crosswalks, and hopefully make it safer and easier for kids to get from my neighborhood over near the park, from Rideout neighborhood over to Thoreau School District, which is on the other side of Route 62. So
Phil, can I ask you a question?
absolutely.
It's Ellen, and I love this because I live in the Thoreau district. When you are doing, at what point do you kind of escalate between, okay, signs and lines you need to improve, just the crosswalks, but something like, okay, I need a crossing guard because there's those, and I need I forget what it's called, a stoplight like they have at Bruce Wayne Rail Trail. Will that be part of the long-term bike to school to make sure it's safe?
Well, ideally that would be part of it, right? And so what I'm gonna, and it's a great segue. It's an excellent question because the next bullet talks about an infrastructure grant. So the Signs and Lines grant is a quickie and it's kind of a step in this program. The infrastructure grants that are made available through the program are much more, I would call it substantial money. So just to give you a sense of this, I know that this text is really small. I'm not sure how well it's coming out on the screen. But to give you an idea of how this funding is used in other places, this is a recap of program funding from the town of Reading. Reading has a campus with a high school and a middle school on one side and a primary school on the other side of a street. There's a fairly heavily traveled road in between the two streets. So what this project says is that it's going to put Oakland Road on a road diet by reducing the width of the existing traveled lanes and creating space for a shared use path with a hardscape buffer, intersection safety improvements at various roads, including new sidewalks, curbing, curb extensions, roadway resurfacing, sidewalk signage, crosswalk improvements, and pavement markings. So, this is a sort of complete streets idea, if we remember all of that stuff. This project is on the tip for the state funding through MassDOT. And ultimately where the money comes from is from the federal government. So that if you see where it says FHWA funding, that's Federal Highway Administration funding. This is a TIP project. So
What does TIP stand for?
that's the Transportation Improvement Project. So all
Thanks.
of the larger state funded projects are put on a funding list. And those projects float eventually up to the top of the list and get funded. So this particular project, there's some further details when you go and dig around on the webpage, but the state portion of this project was about 10%. The federal portion of the project was 90%. And I imagine that the town had some participation in the planning and early stages of this project. But for a $2.3 million project, I think the town's participation was probably a few $100,000 as opposed to a $2.3 million price tag. So
Bill, do you know what the criteria was, why they won? I mean, wondering, what was it that made Reading the winner of 2.3 million?
Well, I don't know in particular, but I do know that when projects are proposed, there's a scoring system that is employed, and the scoring system includes the kind of, active participation in the Safe Routes to School program in order to be eligible to get funding through this source. So while the sort of volunteer efforts are at no cost and are, really focused on education and communication at the grassroots level, that active participation leads to the additional points when projects like this are scored. So, Reading is a somewhat comparable community to Concord in the sense that it's a suburban community. It's within it's within the central MPO planning district, and it's also within the MAPC planning district. So it is comparable in that sense. And the types of activities that go on through the DPW and the planning department are fairly comparable as well. So the main thing, and then let me just move to the next slide. And like I said, from this grassroots point of view, is doing things like the bike to school day, the bike rodeos, and this one was from a few years back at Rideout Field. As you can see, we had police officers participating, we had the kids participating. These rodeos are run by certified bike instructors, so there's some actual safety instruction that goes on in addition to just having fun. But from the town end of it, and in terms of trying to utilize this as a way of leveraging municipal funds and Chapter 90 funds, is the staff has an opportunity to be trained on how to use the tools. And then we need to have the capacity to use them, because when you apply for grants, and this was, good learning for me personally, for better or for worse, when you apply for the $10,000 grant, or whether you apply for $2 million, it's still a grant application that's made through MassDOT. And the issues with dealing with MassDOT are various. There's a lot of bureaucracy. You have to do it their way. It's good to be trained so that you know what's important to put in those grant applications and what you can just cut and paste. I know that the town DPW is very stretched right now. And Elizabeth was kind enough to offer her services so that this grant application could be prepared, because I really think that the DPW doesn't have the present capacity to make grant applications of this nature.
They're also not that good at grant writing.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, there's that too.
I,
And
They're
Elizabeth is
engineers.
great
It's
at
a-
it,
it's
so.
an art.
It is,
It's a skill.
So it was my pleasure. I don't,
this is great.
it's a simple grant
Thank-
process, so
thank
it was
you.
good.
Thank you.
Phil, I would love to see the scoring system for that, the
Well,
Reading.
I will try to crack open the secret algorithm and get that.
Okay, this is
so-
like
When-
so super
I have a
cool.
question, Phil. When you mention tools and then staff training, you're talking about tools for writing an application or scoping a problem, a
Yeah,
project?
about
Okay.
it's not just the writing part of it, but it's understanding how to give MassDOT what it wants when these applications are made and
Okay.
as the projects are formulated. So,
That's a great way to summarize that.
Thank you.
right, so when you were asking me, how do you get to the top of the tip? How do you get projects prioritized? There's a whole number of steps that are part of the process, both, at the MassDOT level, at the municipal level, and at the state level too, because, the reality is that projects move up and down these lists as a result of advocacy on the part of our legislative delegation, and advocacy on the part of the select board and the town manager. So
Do you, I have another question, Phil. Do you happen to know if any infrastructure projects involve land that is actually on the town, the school physical school site? Because I imagine one of the congestion areas with different modes of transportation are crisscrossing buses, personal vehicles, walkers, cyclists, etc., is converging on the school itself. So does, and especially like with more interest from the parent organizations, it would probably be good to find out from examples or something written down about what are all areas where there is traffic eligible, or are there sort of limits on who owns?
I think that's a good question. And just to be clear, the money that's made available for this type of activity is generally on municipal property, meaning the town roads and town infrastructure, as opposed to school property, meaning the buildings themselves. But when you're talking about a driveway, for example, like if you can imagine the driveway going into Concord Carlisle High School, I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know whether or not Safe Routes to School might have been used. For example, if you go over to Acton Boxborough High School, they just redid their campus entrance just north of where 27 crosses Route 111, that intersection.
Yeah.
And they put in a very wide sidewalk with a dedicated bike lane, and there's a big road construction project going on over there.
Oh,
So
okay.
that might be, a way of answering the question you have of what paid for that improvement.
Okay.
Nick, you had a question?
Yeah, Laura was first. Go ahead, Laura.
So I had a question about with
Mm.
these infrastructure grants, is there sort of a geographic bound? Like, does it have to be within a mile or half a mile of a school? The thing that springs to mind is this perennial concern about the crosswalk at the library, which I think is not super close to any of our schools, but is certainly one of those like safe routes to school
Yeah.
corridors.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if that would be something that could be applied for through this program.
I think the answer is, I have seen the figure 2 miles radius around a school, but I don't know, I can't quote that and say that's exactly the right number. And it may be variable depending on, whether or not you're talking about an urban school versus, an exurban or rural school. But I did see the number 2 miles used in one document, and that may be a federal guideline as opposed to a state guideline, to be honest with you.
Okay, sounds like a good question, something to investigate.
Yeah, somebody, it's amenable to being answered, because
Yeah.
all of these things are fairly detailed in state and federal regulations and policies. So when the scoring is done and the examination of the particular projects is
Nick,
taken, they'll take
I
something
wanna-
like that into consideration.
Phil, sorry, Phil, Nick, what were you gonna say? What were you gonna ask?
Regarding the access road in the high school, I'm pretty sure that the school department had to bring that to town meeting to get their own grant to repave that road within the last 2 years. So
Yeah, they did. I remember
yeah,
that.
so it's not a town road.
No, it's definitely a driveway for sure. It's within the campus. No question about it. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that, this is not this money is not part of like the school building assistance fund or that kind of stuff. And it would be available to redevelop other types of campus improvements like.
Right, so I mean, and another point of view, the question is to school, does that mean to the front door or to the property line?
Yeah,
Right, so that's, I think, worth researching so that we're clear about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good to know.
So I think we'll get some more information from the Thoreau project, because the Thoreau principal is very enthusiastic about this program. He is new to the district. He worked in Fitchburg before this, and he worked on a project that had a major grant, $1 million or multi-million-dollar grant for the school that he was the principal of. So
Okay.
he's pretty high on going through the steps and understands that, positive things can develop as a result of
All right.
our
I have
participation.
one more
Yeah,
question.
go ahead.
Is there any actual measurement being done about what effect this has in terms of whether or not more kids are using the bikes or riding or walking to school?
So in terms of we'll call this rough and dirty data collection. When I first started working on this, Nick, which was it was the pandemic year, so it was the spring of 2020 and then the fall of 2020. I counted the number of bikes at the Thoreau school, and literally just kids would get into school, and then I would count and make reference to it. So during the pandemic, when kids were encouraged by the school to walk and bike to reduce the numbers on the school buses, there were a lot more bikes. During the event days, a lot more kids show up to school on the bikes for sure at each of the schools. So in terms of the numbers of kids in general in the Concord district, I think we've seen an uptick in the number of kids participating on the off days as opposed to the event days. But it's not, a precise calculation and somebody isn't observing it every day.
Thanks, Phil. I need to keep this moving along because we have a
Yep.
bunch of other things to cover. But Laura, you had another question?
Yeah, I just had, and this is maybe something to put on a future agenda, Mark, so we don't have to discuss this in length. But I feel like one of my outstanding questions with this program is, you know, we know from state studies at the federal level that raised pedestrian crossing tables reduce, I forget if it's the incidence of fatality or the incidence of collision by 45%. It's like a very well documented traffic calming strategy. And I feel like we're still very unsettled in this community about whether we would do that. We don't have any in town, and it's kind of gone back and forth about whether we could do, you know, like whether town staff would be willing to accept that, since it does have some drawbacks in terms of snow removal, and it's like a 2-second delay on emergency response times. So maybe this is just a conversation to bring back, because like I can see, for instance, I was at the walk audit at the Thoreau School, and there we were examining the crosswalks in a couple of places, and there were a couple of places where my instinct was, wow, we should have a raised crosswalk here to bring attention to that there, you know, that there might be school children crossing at this location. But this is just like a big open question, I think, still. So, I mean, it's a conversation to have with engineering, but, you know, this body should have some opinion on that, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's important to, well, Ellen, you got
Sorry,
it.
so I would say, yes, my brother lives in Westfield, New Jersey, and it's exactly what they do, Laura, right along all the schools are a raised, I forget what they call it, a
Mhm.
platform, a
Tables,
hump or something,
tables.
but tables, thank you. And it, you know, it's accepted and it's incredibly effective, so I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think,
and
I mean,
they're doing it in Cambridge. They're doing it in lots of places in Massachusetts. So
Sure.
we know that it's not
Okay.
a regional like weather issue. We know that there are other municipalities that are dealing with it. So
yeah,
Yeah.
that's also
Thank you.
important because I was thinking about, I mean, you know, it must not be against the federal law, and I thought and if it's not, if it's done in other Massachusetts communities, so
great.
that
Awesome.
safety
And-
like race crosswalks.
and
we
just
should-
to be clear, it is recommended by MassDOT. It's on their website as
Really?
a safe speeds, roadway treatment, technical toolkit. It's in their like vertical.
Can you send Elizabeth the link to that if you have it easy?
I
And she can
mean,
send people?
sure, it's just
I
on the
mean,
MassDOT website, but yeah.
Okay, yeah, I mean, if it's easy for you to find, because you know what it looks like.
And I think this is excellent when you're trying to make, basically cars not the decider of roads. This is
Yeah.
a great way to signal that, even, you know, straight advertising. I
And
think is
also
good.
start with schools as a nexus
Yeah,
for
Yeah, for sure.
children crossing. Okay, I want to move on to the next slide.
Okay, so
Elizabeth.
can I just take one
Oh,
last?
yes, go ahead.
one
Tie
last
up. I'll
second,
give you a
and-
minute to tie up, Phil.
I think the last thing I wanted to say about this was I think the good thing about this, the virtue of this program is it brings the public's attention to the connection between transportation and their personal lives. And you know what it means to be a kid on the street trying to get to school, or what it means to be a motorist trying to deal with kids on bikes, that kind of stuff. You know, given the fact that basically you know, it's at the grassroots part of the program, it's a free thing. It's something that we should continue to encourage and continue to work on. And at the other end of the scale, maybe it will be one of the tools in the toolkit for trying to help the DPW lick their larger scope problems. So, you know, hopefully we'll catch the interest of the town manager, and you know, the town can continue to support this.
Thank you, Phil. That's great. It really appreciate the update and everything. Okay, so do
So
you
I need to stop sharing, right?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think,
There we
okay, excellent, thanks. So the next item on the agenda is people may have noticed that on the town website, when you go to the committees and you go to TAC, unlike most other committees, there's no description of what TAC is for the public. So I just sent Elizabeth an email with a little Word document with a very simple statement,
Mhm.
which I'll just read.
A suggestion.
Yes, go
Let me
ahead.
cut you off. Elizabeth and I,
Okay.
are meeting- Elizabeth and I are meeting next Monday to talk about things on the webpage and access for the public to information that we're working on.
Okay, yeah,
And go ahead and read it, but we can just take it and then you reconcile if necessary with the charge from the subcommittee and come back with a specific proposal at the next meeting.
okay, that sounds good. Let me just read this as a straw man to start. I thought there's some virtue in making it very simple. So I was saying the Transportation Advisory Committee, TAC, serves to advise the town manager and the select board on matters related to transportation in the town of Concord. The members of the TAC, I've got 4 here, of the TAC are appointed by the Concord's town manager.
Sounds
So,
good.
so
I would just add mobility to it.
Oh. Dang, he's gonna-
transportation and mobility.
No, I was gonna say, on matters related to all modes of transportation
Okay,
And I would say
and
including,
the interdisciplinary connections within the town of Concord.
that sounds like a
Inter-
high
What
school
does that
course.
mean?
How about
Well, not
intermodal?
Well,
interdisciplinary.
And
intermodal
their-
connections.
and their-
Intermodal? I mean, I want something in there about public transit. It's not just infrastructure.
yeah,
No,
that's true.
Let's
Okay.
not.
I'm sure,
make-
Nick, that you'll do it. So we'll next meeting.
Yeah, brevity is really important. And, if
No,
you
you
start
get about
adding
2
in every
sentences.
mode of transportation,
Two
that's
sen-
going to be unreadable, is my opinion.
Related to modes of transportation in the town of Concord, so just one word.
Mhm.
Okay,
good.
I mean, the thing I think is that, you want to say the minimum that then is very easy to expand. What do you mean by that word or that word? But I like the idea, Nick, of if you and Elizabeth are going to meet and talk about the pages anyway. If you would also fine tune this and bring it back to another meeting, that'd be great.
I don't, I'm not sure it's necessary, to say who appoints you or not.
Well, the town manager had in one conversation I had with her, happened to mention that there's confusion even among people who ought to know better, that all boards are appointed by the select board. And so in a certain sense, to me, it makes a difference because one of our functions, I think, is to work more closely with staff than certain committees that are off. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, we also have a separate gigantic task that I don't know if and when we're gonna be able to handle, which is our charge is not really fine-tuned in a great way.
No,
But we are appointed by
completely.
the town manager, not by the select board. Select board
Huh.
Even though
approves.
you all have been appointed by the select board,
They vote to accept
Accept.
the,
the appointment?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, that's the way it is. So I think it's an important legal distinction. Town manager, in a conversation I had with her, said that it seemed to be, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but it was like she would like people to know that there's these kind of committees and these kind of committees. So I don't know what you
Okay.
think. You can ask some people.
I think,
And I mean,
Hang on. no,
I'm
I'm
not insistent on having it
Oh,
in there,
no, I'm
but
gonna,
I think it
gonna
could be
share.
useful.
I'm gonna share my screen for
Mhm.
just a second. Cause. It's not hard of. I'm not a touchpad person.
Hmm.
So this is where this
Yes,
description
this is where it would be.
is going, so.
Yeah, maybe it does
I-
not need to be on that. page.
Yeah,
I don't
Right.
think it needs to be
That's
on
fine.
this page.
Okay, good.
But
But maybe on the other page somewhere.
on the main page?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because I think that's one of the clear things in our charge And there are a lot of things in our charge that are not very clear to me.
Oh, the
So-
charge is a
so-
completely separate topic
Yes, yes.
that y'all
But-
get to take up at a day,
But,
other date.
but what I'm saying on on the separate webpage that you and Nick are gonna talk about, and maybe the linked sub web pages, somewhere on there, I think it's helpful to, highlight who appoints the members at some point to inform the public, so they don't have to read the charge to know that. There may be a few things that are kind of good to have out there. All right, then I think, any other comments on this, agenda item? If not, we can move on to the next one. I think we have a plan. Thanks very much, Nick, for volunteering to, work on this. Okay, the next, item is to give a update on the Stantec statements of work. So some interesting developments have occurred, that I want to convey to people. So, in addition to, separate from the $100,000 existing contract, of which approximately $69,000 I've heard is remaining, a new additional contract with Stantec has been created with its own statement of work, and $170,000 has been identified and assigned to that new separate contract. The new contract is including a large amount of work on asset management for roads and for sidewalks to work out how we can bring them up to a good and functional and maintainable condition. It's desired also in there that one of the outcomes will be some planning level planning level designs for improvements on key corridors, addressing some of these crossing and intersection problems that various people and various committees over the years have raised. Additionally, it's going to task Stantec with making recommendations, analyzing and making recommendations regarding the MassDOT Route 2 study, and kind of prepare groundwork so that MassDOT can hear from Concord when it decides what Concord would like to see for the MCI and the Rotary. We know how to most effectively engage with MassDOT on that. So I think this is a major step towards supporting the bonding request for the town meeting, where we'll have the Stantec as an independent engineering entity, analyze this asset management for roads and sidewalks. And then this leaves the original contract, which is temporarily on hold, to be determined how best to utilize it and coordinate it to the new reality of having this other contract going on. So there are things in the original contract that are still useful and can go forward. So and possibly one of the things I think that was mentioned in the original contract is public transportation. At least it's certainly something that TAC has highlighted in the vision document for goals and actions, and in the thoughts on public transit. So certainly that's one of the things maybe that would be worked on under that previous contract. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, if they're, when you say recommendation for the MassDOT study, was that the study where they were trying to increase lanes on Route 2?
Well,
Judgment, and then
they
also
were
would-
for a long, all the way out to Fitchburg.
Right, right.
Devens, they wanted to kind of look at everything. So yeah, this would be that. And by the way, Steve Dukran sent me the statement of work for this new study, and I'll pass it on to Elizabeth to give to all the TAC members. So
Could it
you can
occur-
look at the actual statement of work if you want.
I, if they're gonna do key corridors, and I imagine that, although it's still CBD, MCI as one of the kind of core places to connect to, that to try to see where in conjunction with bike, walk, bike and walk, to have mass transit in there too. And that's also kind of the multimodal, what are the multimodal points? Like the train station, and maybe it is MCI Concord, so you have a place to park your bikes, like Laura was talking about, what is in Acton. Something that's really safe and amenable and makes people want to bring their bike to
Right.
those train stations. I think, so when you have a corridors, it'd be great if it weren't just assuming that it was gonna be a car, of course, you aren't saying that, but mass transit as well and multimodal. I think that's something, it's important. It's not just a single stream. It's not just cars, it's not just bikes, it's not just walking. It's how do you combine them all?
Right, yeah, no, and one of the challenges with regard to the MCI reuse and the Rotary is how those interact, and the fact that we have a MCI study commission with 3 subcommittees, where each of which covers a different aspect of it, and each of which has a lot of work to do. So to me, it makes sense to have Stantec kind of preparing the interface to MassDOT in parallel with
Got it.
these committees, which I encourage as TAC members have time to follow the MCI study committees. As this kind of vision, like you're saying,
Right.
Ellen.
Do we have a
evolves.
formal person connected into the MCI
No, we
mega
don't.
committee?
No, we don't. Well, my understanding.
Yes,
From hearing,
well, not
Well,
informally members, but,
I meant the TAC folks.
oh,
Oh, you're connected
Does the
in?
town?
oh, yeah,
I'm sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you're
What
involved.
can you tell us about the 3
Yeah.
committees?
We're listening.
the 3
3
subcommittees.
subcommittees, yes.
So for MCI Concord, I'm 100% connected with just the advisory board,
Mhm.
and the land use and visioning subcommittee.
Okay,
So they are currently drafting a request for proposals to hire a consultant to do the visioning process and the zoning, development of new zoning.
Mhm.
There's a communications subcommittee,
Mhm.
and they're looking at what the advisory board is gonna need to really, get, get that communication out there, the community engagement
Right.
and all of that. And then there's a legal and I'm gonna say, I don't wanna say legislative, but government.
Political?
I don't know what the exact name of the subcommittee
I
is,
know
but
legal is in there.
I know legal's in there,
Yeah.
but so, they're looking at like the different contracts,
Mhm.
that go between DCAM, the legislation for the zoning, the interdepartmental and interstate, cause there's a lot of different moving groups and pieces and parts, and
Mhm.
so they're kind of involved in that aspect of it. So, no, there's no
Okay.
member of TAC that sits on the advisory board.
No.
No.
No,
It sounds like the
yeah.
land use and visioning one is the one we might want to keep an eye on.
So the communications and community engagement subcommittee is establishing a list of stakeholders. And I believe a letter is going out to the chair. I think they've so far identified 91 different stakeholders. And
Okay.
I can't remember, I'm pretty sure TAC's on that.
Mhm.
So like,
Okay.
planning board, TAC, natural, they're all on there, so,
I was only saying that we have like people who say they're gonna be connecting with that committee, and I was just
Mhm.
wondering, not that we have like infinite amount of times as volunteers, but that would be, maybe it's the land use one, maybe it's just keeping track of it, but
Yeah, I think, I mean.
maybe they're gonna
and-
reach out to us. I don't know how it works.
Well, at the very least, I think we should probably pass around among us notice of those, highlight notice of those meetings. And as people are able to start following it, I think
Yeah.
it's important both as TAC members and as also just residents of Concord to be following this, because it really is a big deal and it's going to be going on for quite some time.
Okay.
And the other thing that I'm not sure, I haven't followed it closely, so I'm not sure, but I heard one person talking about the recommendation that you know, most of the work is done in the 3 subcommittees, and then there's sort of a timetable of when important information is decided to get together the sort of the executive committee.
Mhm.
So, you know, these things overlap, and they obviously, I mean, 91 stakeholders, I think
Crazy.
everybody's a stakeholder, so, yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I just think that there's lots of, you know, opportunities for TAC. If they reach out to us, maybe I will follow up because I am quite interested in what's happening in MCI Concord. Just
Okay.
as a complete aside, has Elizabeth, any discussion about a commercial development, industrial?
Any,
Maybe offline, just
no, I'm sorry. one more time?
biotech, you know,
You sh-
Has there been any what?
this is, I mean, I'll talk to you later.
Zoning for industry.
Zoning for things like, they said Kendall
There's-
Square West was one thing, comment.
There's been no conversation about anything.
Oh, God, okay.
Other than that initial public forum that DCAM held.
Oh, that's it?
That's it so far.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, if Ellen, if you want to pick up on that land use one, they apparently
Yeah.
they had their first meeting on October 15th, so you might try to find the recording of that one, it appears in.
Okay, I will. Thanks.
Yeah, I think maybe people should try to educate themselves about
Right.
what's been going on, what the structure is, and then we can decide at a future TAC meeting, you know, or communicate, kind of, people can just volunteer. I don't want to set up any additional bureaucracy
Okay,
myself.
I think we should just be watching at this point and seeing what they're talking about, and then discussing it among ourselves and figuring out how to respond rather than participating.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, and
No.
because I get the sense that, I mean, they have a gigantic task and they're still getting settled,
Right.
is what I would imagine, but don't have the actual facts. All right.
Yeah,
if
and
there's no-
they're operating under some state imposed timetables that they have to get things done. So it's not just like this is going to drag on forever. They've got to get answers and proposals on the table within the next year or less.
Right, and there's some significant amount of state money given to people, and I'm sure they're trying to figure how best to utilize that.
And they have to spend it soon.
okay.
Okay, all right,
Great.
so the next item on the agenda is just a general discussion, communication, collaboration with other committees. And then kind of tacked onto that, how we build support among committees, but also among the public for the borrowing for the asset management asks at the next town meeting. So as far as communication with other committees, one thing I did go to Economic Vitality meeting and present, and I've spoken with the chair of the Commission on Disability, and they are going to be very busy at their next meeting, but at their next meeting, I will probably present to them and discuss the vision document and the public thoughts on public transit. Ellen, you had talked.
I haven't talked to people since that meeting and I will do that after the election.
But that was, oh yeah, you're busy.
After the
But
election.
I mean, another group to talk to would be Council on Aging.
Oh.
And my,
I'm happy to go talk to Council on Aging and Concord Children's Center.
okay.
What are we
sure.
talking about?
Just talking, well, right now we're talking about the sharing, making sure that other committees and groups are aware that TAC has created this transportation mobility vision document and put together a document of thoughts on public transit.
Oh, okay.
Because I think that there's at least focusing on two things. There's a short-term need for the public to understand how important supporting the infrastructure bonding, is to all users of roads and sidewalks in town. The second thing is to start building up, support and interest in public transportation so that we really know who it would serve and what kind of services might be desirable, because I imagine that there are multiple ways in which, even if we get a service started, it won't be the most effective one or the most successful one. We really need to know what, who would use it, and since it's kind of a chicken and egg, if it doesn't exist, people
Right.
Almost don't know what they, what's possible and what they could get. There was, I think, positive response, even though it wasn't large numbers of people using that trolley pilot, but I think that if that was maintained for a few years, that could have built up. And anyway, so there's that.
So I'm happy to go to Council on Aging, and maybe also that would be Concord Park and Newbury Court about the transit, because they have things themselves right now.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the other thing, important, I think, with Council on Aging. They, since they do run a service, they probably have useful information for us about what works, what doesn't work, what people are asking for that they can't provide, and whether they see a possibility of collaboration.
Sure, I'll do that.
With other resources. But yes, the election is definitely
No, that's fine.
priority issue for all of us. Okay, in terms of public outreach and support for the borrowing, I'm not sure when we're going to get something from Stantec, but Public Works is the Public Works Commission is presumably the leader in building support for the planned bonding request at town meeting. So I will try myself to work with the chair and the Public Works Commission to find out how they think TAC can best support them. So I will communicate with them on that. Does anyone else have any thoughts about committees or groups that would be important to reach out to soon?
We've picked off some that I think are the most important, and my opinion is we should concentrate on those and learn how to do those as being the most important, and try not to spread ourselves too thin.
What one thought I had was with regard to support for Public Works and the borrowing. Mariana, you had asked for some of the documentation from the survey, Stantec survey and everything.
Yes.
Yeah, so I was wondering if it just occurred to me right now that if you have time to look through that and see if you can kind of filter or funnel things that relate to improvements to existing infrastructure and maintenance, sidewalks, things like that.
Yeah.
In terms of maybe some processing of that into, there were so many requests about sidewalks or crossings or whatever. That might be something for us to use in a public campaign to support the town meeting article.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. And haven't made as much progress on that in the last couple of weeks as I'm hoping, but
Yeah, but
trying to
it's
kind
just
of
a
put the
thought.
big picture together and then see if that's something we want to take back to Stantec to work on, or if we can kind of just process that amongst ourselves.
Yeah, I'm just kind of saying, if as you look
Yeah.
through those things which you've gathered, might be good to see if certain responses, combinations of responses or numbers directly support things that, okay, this has been determined.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I like that. Oh, one other interesting thing is that with regard to collaboration and also Stantec, the new contract, is that I think there's a recognition that infrastructure, management and upgrade, when that's coordinated with these needs for safety improvements and
Yeah.
mobility improvements, that's by far the most efficient way to get these, rather than say, well, we'll just do something on intersection A and then we'll do something on intersection B. If it can, probably also gives other funding opportunities if you're dealing with a larger scale project.
I also think it
in
gives,
making-
it's easier for the community to respond if they think, oh, it's going, you know, from here to here, this is the route I use as
Mhm.
opposed to points. Because then they can talk about how do they use it, what do they want,
Mhm.
problems certain times of day, certain weather. I think you
Yeah.
get higher quality response if you're talking
Yeah,
about something.
it's more
people
fun,
can relate
more in
to
terms of how they actually use it.
how they
and function.
reuse
So that's
that
probably
corridor.
something we need to follow closely going forward.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
so
Mark?
yeah, go ahead.
I
ahead,
wanted
Terry.
to mention, or have you mentioned that, the public safety group from the 250th is going to be coming in to meet with you guys?
No, that's a good point. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so, right, Terry put me in touch with the one, Rob Monroe, co-chair of the 250th executive. And they obviously are working a lot on transportation for the 250th. And he agreed that in maybe 2-3 months, but when they kind of have something gelled, he'd be happy to come in and talk to us about what they're doing. And I also kind of mentioned back to him that there are probably, you know, in terms of say, public transit contractors they're working with or other things like that, there may be things we can
Yeah.
kind of learn, make some helpful
Robin, what's
connections.
a name? Robin.
Monroe.
What? Oh, Robin, oh, sure, I know.
Yeah,
Oh, Robin.
yes, yeah. Okay, all right, so I'm gonna, unless people have specific items they want to discuss, I think we've talked a little bit about public transit. Does anyone have new ideas for advancing public transit? I can put this on a later agenda in a bigger way.
I have
Laura?
one thing, as the guy who's,
Oh, okay.
this out.
Sorry, Laura.
Okay.
Go ahead, Nick, and then I'll take
yeah,
Laura.
just,
Sorry.
in discussions with these committees and other people, it's becoming clear that the thing that's in front of their mind is the regional, transportation, first. That's the one where I'm sensing there's the most interest and sort of the path of least resistance, if you want to talk about.
Okay,
I'm not saying to de-emphasize intra-town transportation. I'm just saying, let's observe that there's a lot more interest in regional. So
okay, no,
the other thought is that in terms of the Stantec money, as I understand it, the remaining money from the first contract, the issue is that that was basically money for planning activity and as opposed to engineering activity. And my view is that a lot of the information we need to get started on public transit is planning work to connect with the other towns, collect the information about what they've tried, how it's working, how they funded it, what they're seeing about ongoing operations, whether they've done, you know, that's sort of outlined in the original vision document where I had put asterisks next to the things that I thought could be farmed out. And
Mhm.
those are, I think we could spend the existing money that's already waiting to be spent with Stantec on that planning work about what other towns have done and are planning to do and what their experience is.
Okay, thanks. Laura, sorry, go ahead.
So I'm glad Nick spoke first because this taps into a lot of what he just said. I want to bring back to the forefront this idea of Crosstown Connect and a, you know, what they call a traffic management or what is it, Transportation Management Association. Crosstown Connect was a regional group. We joined it before the pandemic, then the pandemic happened, things fell apart. Elizabeth, I don't know if you have an update or know anything about where this has gone. I know that it had like really fizzled, but I wonder if we could use the Stantec contract and some of this energy into investigating, is Crosstown Connect worth reviving? And just to give context for folks that don't know about what Crosstown Connect is, this is an intermunicipal collaboration. So all of the different towns were paying into this, or the idea was municipalities would pay into it, but also employers could pay into it. You know, the private schools could pay into it. It could be a tool that we use to raise funds from a bunch of different organizations in order to fund a more functional local and regional public transit. Acton does still have active Crosstown Connect programs running. They have a bus loop. I would encourage anybody who's interested in it to go and ride it and like learn about it. You
So-
know, it serves a lot of their multi-unit family housing.
So what I can tell you is I have a phone call next week with the director and another individual with Crosstown Connect. And then have invited them, and I'm just haven't confirmed with them yet, to come to the TAC meeting on
Great.
November 14th.
Okay.
Okay, good. Thank you. Boy, that's,
So, yeah. let's-
Yeah.
You know, one thing too,
let's
Laura,
move it along.
oh, I'm sorry, Phil's got his hand up.
go ahead, Phil. You have to unmute.
Sorry about that. I have another task that I need to
Okay,
address. So, great meeting. Thank you very much.
thank you, Phil.
Elizabeth, thank you again for all your help and very
It's the Legal and Government Affairs Subcommittee,
Okay, sounds
Oh, wow. that's-
pretty
that-
official.
that
Yeah, I'd like
sounds Like,
but
gold
yeah,
plated.
Phil, whatever the next Safe Route to School grant, you know, let's do it.
Okay,
Yes.
well, we're gonna try to talk Matt Lucy into it, so that's the principal for the Willard School, so he's up next. He's
Okay, yeah, Justin was
moving from the
awesome.
on-deck circle into the batter's box.
oh, that's
Thank you, Phil.
Okay,
Thanks a
thanks,
lot.
folks.
Phil. Really helpful.
one thing that strikes me too, when you talk about, I don't know much about Crosstown Connect, and I think I will definitely go over to Acton, is that there certainly is a demand from Council on Aging, because that's what they do, a bus that goes to, Trader Joe's.
Okay,
So there you go. There is a perfect example of how, you know, people want to go outside of
Yeah.
Concord.
yeah, and there's Market Basket.
And Market Basket, which of course Stop and Shop is going to change, is closing. Anyway,
Yeah,
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 Trader
yeah.
Joe's and Market Basket, depending on your budget.
No, I think
great
that's,
idea.
that's great. And thanks, Laura. Did you have a further comment?
Just to clarify, so Crosstown Connect is a way to have that public-private partnership. So I think that we should be thinking really carefully about how do we bring the business community into this? I mean, I think Nick's
Yeah.
planning or vision document or memo, whatever we're calling that document that you put up on our website from the 12th does a great job of explaining like, why is this of benefit to, you know, companies in Concord in terms of
Yeah.
for workers. So I think that figuring out, could this be connected to parking variances? You know, if somebody wants to build fewer parking
Oh.
spaces, great, but then they could pay into this, you know,
Yeah, fund, a transit.
this
fund.
vehicle, this would be a vehicle for collecting, you know, funds from developers, from corporations. So just figuring out how to structure that. And there are great examples of this all over the country. So it's like, this is not we're not reinventing the wheel here. I think we just have to figure out how to customize this for our community.
I mean, Emerson has a bus right now that brings people from, I think it's Framingham. So there's a lot of, maybe you talk to Emerson, you know, how does it work? Where else do you want to, bring people from? So it's just like one town, but boy, I think that they would be hopefully willing to pay in if they aren't already.
And, I mean, another thought, I mean, first of all, I agree that, and thank you, Elizabeth, for, talking to Crosstown Connect, and hopefully we'll get them in here soon to talk to us. That's wonderful. I think it's great to use some existing running organization, rather than try to, develop something from scratch. When we talk about business support, financial support, one thought that occurs to me too is that you know, it's one thing to say, make a substantial commitment to something for a substantial amount of time. I wonder if there might be possibilities, either using resources of Crosstown Connect or something, to do a kind of special shopping day or a special something day where businesses would just, you know, have an ability to get their feet wet in benefits of some public transit as a, without making a long-term commitment. I mean, it's a sort of a vague idea, but kind of a bag day for transit or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or visit other towns. I also wonder if there's among the business community, whether there's, you know, whether they're dependent on people coming into Concord and want to discourage Concord people from going out of Concord, or how much competition there is regionally. It's an interesting thing. Okay, so I'm going to move to our last general item on the agenda. It's very short. Oh, go ahead, Laura. Go ahead.
I'm always here with a book recommendation. But
Better buses, of course she does.
better buses, better cities. I just think that for this committee, just getting a sense of how do you establish a functional public transit system? Because I think that there are a lot of ideas that have been tried elsewhere. And like, I think that we as a town have a tendency to say like, oh, well, we're going to invent this like super customized thing for, but like there are things that work and things that don't work in public transit, and it is such a costly mistake to make. So I think that really honing in on what are the strategies that work, you know, sometimes having very limited numbers of stops, but high frequency, like that's like the best way to start typically. So, you know, like Nick's document pointed out, like 20-minute frequency between, you know, these two town centers, like that may be the thing that we need to start before you start having some big regional thing where you end up having frequency every 2 hours and nobody's going to use that service. So just, it's a thin book. It won't take you long to read. But, and it's more urban, but we can learn from.
Okay, thanks.
Send around a link to it on Amazon or Concord Bookshop or someplace. Thanks.
Okay. All right. No, that's good. Well, you know, one could think about what would it cost to have one day well announced with such a every 20-minute shuttle back and forth between the two town centers. I mean, what would that cost? How would we fund that? And just tell people ride the bus and get a coupon for ice cream or something. Anyway.
Like especially around the holidays, you know, when it's like the town center, they're so mobbed and there's no parking.
Yeah, that's true. I will quickly take a public comment from Janet Miller. Go ahead, Janet.
Thank you. You probably have thought about this and looked into it, but Lexington's had its own little bus service for years. And I know I went to the website, they have real-time tracking of where the buses are. I'm not quite sure the frequency of them, but they, you know, the route that goes to Burlington Mall, I think there are 3 routes, but you know, how is it supported? Who uses it? I mean, there's a whole lot of questions that I would like answered, and I just wondered whether you'd looked into that at all.
Yes, I had covered Lexington, Bedford, and Acton all have services, and that's what I'm hoping that we can use the planning money with Stantec for, is to give us exactly that sort of analysis that you're talking about.
I think that information would be super valuable. Thanks, Janet, for the suggestion. Okay, next one. This is very brief, but continuing discussion about signage and safety at Junction Park and West Concord Village Center. Elizabeth has mentioned to me that there are other committees which are have as part of their concerns, general discussions of signage in West Concord Village. And you know, to me, the you know, the wayfinding and finding your way to businesses and finding your way, you know, if you're on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail and you want to find some kind of business, or if you're at a business and you want to find the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, or all that, it's kind of, I don't know, would people agree that it's a somewhat confusing place, or? There's also, of course, concerns about not having too many signs. Elizabeth, could you tell us a little bit about what other committees that you're aware of might
Yep, so there's
be considering?
at least gonna be two, and that's the West Concord Advisory Committee,
Mhm,
and the West Concord Junction Cultural District
mhm.
Committee.
Okay,
Okay.
The Cultural District Committee, and I don't know if it was 2, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. It happens so fast.
mhm,
But they did have, a cultural district grant and, hired a consultant to help develop a wayfinding signage program.
mhm.
And I'm gonna have to, email Marcia, cause it's my understanding it got to a point and then there was absolutely like no consensus
Mhm.
on this wayfinding signage,
Huh.
and then, I think it just kind of fizzled out. But I do think that, in recent meetings, I have to follow up with, the economic vitality manager. I think they have kind of, again, revitalized the issue and, hey, there's, we really need to think about, wayfinding signage and
Mhm.
coordinated signage.
Mhm.
And the West Concord Advisory Committee at their last meeting, also started talking about, just the issue of signage and, not just Junction Park, but just,
Mhm.
in signage, coordinated signage and wayfinding and, kiosks or this or that within the whole,
Mhm.
village.
Mhm.
And told them the same thing I'm telling you is like, well, wouldn't you know it, the Transportation Advisory Committee is, currently, looking at some of the concerns that have been raised with Junction, Park.
Mhm.
And, I think it would be phenomenal for the three groups to have a conversation about it, and then, maybe there's, one member from each that can, can collaborate, but have the three start working towards, you know, towards,
Right.
some
Yeah.
progress.
Okay, well, I
The
think,
issue.
to me, to me, a place to start would be, first of all, Elizabeth, if there is some history of, consultant work or something like that, to have that, recovered and supplied to all three committees. So they have that starting point. I can, clean up possibly some of the signage pictures I was, taking. And that can be distributed to the other committees. And then I would suggest, rather than creating a group of members from the committees, that if we can individually volunteer to go to some of the other committees, I'd be very
Yeah.
interested to go. And they are certainly welcome to come here and participate, to participate as individuals in our committee meetings. It sounds like a very, well, it sounds like there's a consensus that there's a need, but there's not a consensus about, quote unquote, solution.
No,
or an
no,
action, right?
there's definitely, and,
Yeah, so-
most of the times, any solution
Mhm.
or action requires funding and staff to support that. So,
Yeah.
that's something that hasn't
Right.
been discussed, but I think at least the three, the three groups can work together on. Mark and this committee have already kind of started looking at, Junction Park, and so maybe the cultural district kind of thinks about it from a business perspective.
Right,
And,
right.
West Concord Advisory Committee can think about it from a land use and connection perspective and, and I was not saying form
No.
another group, form a task force or nothing, we cannot handle another group, but if one member from each of those three committees, they, come together and say, okay, this is what I'm thinking as TAC moves forward and then each goes back and, talks to their respective committees and then goes and visits the other groups. That's perfectly fine.
Yeah, well, I think, I mean, to me, what,
Nick,
yeah, just a second. I just wanted to say that to me, a place to start is gathering and sharing information. So if this committee, I mean, for, I can, do it informally. Individual members can reach out to another group or chair of another committee or a member they know. But if we can have a first stage of sort of discovery of here's what we're seeing now, and here's what function we don't think is being served that's useful, whether it's more business related or whatever it is. We should certainly, we could even create sort of documents or collections of information, each committee, and then share these back and forth, because they're sharing information is fine as long as it's, kind of vetted by the committees. Go ahead, Nick, you wanted to say something?
I'd say the first thing would be helpful is for whoever thinks they have input on this is to try to come up with a statement for what we think the problems are. What
are the problems?
What are the problems and what are we trying to solve? There's some sort of vision of what Concord might be like if the whole signage thing were better. The second statement is that, frankly, I don't think that in-house among our committee members and staff, we have people with the competence to design a solution. And there are companies like Sasaki, who I believe is still in Watertown, who do things like designing, wayfinding signage programs for communities. And they have the tools to, sit down and work with groups within the town to define what the issues are and the constraints, and then come up with some possible solutions. So I think that our main thing within the town is to figure out what the heck we're trying to do, why we're trying to do it, so that we could conceivably hand off a problem for somebody to investigate solutions.
I would think that might be within the scope of our existing Stantec contract, wouldn't it?
I would think so.
But-
Planning.
would they be the right? They're
Well, no,
sibling.
they aren't the right people to do it. A company
Oh,
like Sasaki is a design company, and they know how to, I think, in my opinion, my experience in working with Sasaki, that a company like that specializes in exactly that sort of thing.
Right, but I don't think we're at that stage. I think I like what you said about what are the problems, what are we trying to solve? If the three different groups could each create a document that's, with input from their members and the public that says, here's what we see as the problem. Maybe we'll overlap to a great extent. Maybe we'll have separate, viewpoints. But I think getting the questions about what we're trying to accomplish here is important. Laura, sorry you had to wait.
No, that's okay. I assume that the signage in Junction Park is not governed by the same rules that the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail is, but I do think that it would be worth looking at the design manual for the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. The Bruce Freeman Rail Trail signs are not something that we get to just design ourselves. They're standardized across the whole corridor, and those are dictated by the state. I'm not sure if it's DCR or MassDOT or whatever. I can't remember. I'm sorry, my memory is failing me this morning. I can't remember if I went to a workshop that was separate from the TAC or it was somebody presenting to the TAC from one of those state agencies, but they have a written design manual that is it's like the traffic signal, like the standardized traffic signal dictated by,
MHACD.
yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. So,
No,
so it's like,
there was a gentleman from, Mass Daughter MAPC that presented to TAC a while back about signage. But I think
Oh.
this is I'm not sure if that applies directly here, but that's a very good point you make. If there are signage regulations for the rail trail, and if these are sort of state endorsed or associated with a state agency, we should have those on the table. We need to get
Well,
all these things.
and the
out
point I
there.
was making is not that they're state endorsed, they are state mandated.
Mhm.
And so they have been designed and adopted by the state. And that's what municipalities are to use along the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. So I think that looking to that first are the tools that we need for this problem in that resource guide.
Yeah.
Before we
Sure.
start thinking about hiring a design consultant, which may not even be appropriate, because it is, although Junction Park is, I'm not sure if it's part of what's governed by this document. This was a while ago that I went to this workshop or we had this presentation. So I'm sure that Elizabeth, maybe you know more about this than I remember about it.
No, that was all a Marcia. A Marcia thing. I do know that there's standardized wayfinding signage for the whole Bruce Freeman Rail Trail.
Mhm.
But then as you come up to road crossings,
Yeah,
again,
yeah.
that's standard requirements for signage.
Mhm.
But within Junction Park, that's not the same as the actual Bruce Freeman Rail Trail corridor. So
So it's complicated, but getting all those informative sets of information, I think that's the first step. So I'll try to look for that and we'll, but I think just in terms of capability and volunteer power, finding a way that the three committees can collaborate in terms of each putting forward what they think are the problems, what are they trying to solve, and what existing tools and information are there. So maybe we can kind of create some kind of little mission statement, and if TAC likes, I could draft some kind of such a thing to kind of have Elizabeth pass on to the chairs of the other committees,
Okay.
just because I like this. What are the problems? What are we trying to solve? And what regulations apply and what studies have been done? I mean, just get those, what studies, if any, have been done. Get all that information shared, and then each.
Yeah,
committee
could you
can
share,
kind
because I'll give you some input, because I'm thinking about,
Okay.
there's, I was looking at, wayfinding, I don't quite understand the whole context of it, but to me, it seems like the nice thing is that the beauty of a stop sign or a yield sign is you know when you see it,
Mhm.
what it is, so, making it intuitive. I mean,
Oh,
Junction
yeah,
Park
yeah.
has got,
If it's
it's
custom.
awful.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of, what are we trying to do and how do we make it easy to find the information without reading 10-point font on a sign?
Well, and there are other road crossings on the trail.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I just meant that, I
And,
think in terms of making West Concord Junction, my lovely town, like community, more intuitive, more inviting. I think that's the concept I'm thinking.
And it also interacts with any other kind of infrastructure improvements and things, so there's a lot going on.
Elizabeth, is there any such thing in Concord Center?
no, there's no.
I'm just wondering.
Yeah, no, there's no coordinated
Okay.
signage program for the town.
Okay, got it.
So,
Okay.
again, it's,
It's the empty seat in Public Works.
Does anybody know if there's
It's-
other towns that have done this?
oh, yeah, there's
Waltham,
lots of communities that
Yeah,
have.
some of them
What-
have, you see
what
the
did
same
you say,
sign,
Nick?
the same color, and,
Waltham did
Anyway.
it years ago.
Waltham, okay, thanks.
yeah, okay,
Well,
I
I
wanna,
think Lexington has
Waltham,
one,
Lexington.
Salem has one. There's
No, I'm
lots
just
of
curious.
towns, yeah.
All right, I'm gonna close this part of the meeting and
Thank you.
ask whether Terry Ackerman, our liaison from the select board, has any comments. Terry, are you still there? I see her sign up, but she's muted. Okay.
Sorry, no, I don't have any more comments. Good discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry.
Okay, thanks, Terry. Okay, and are there any public comments? Just raise your hand or unmute.
Hi,
Gina, hello, who
Yeah.
is this?
hi, it's
Identify
Gina,
yourself.
Gina Stark.
Gina Stark, okay, thanks.
Yeah. And I was a little late to the meeting. I'm sorry, I had a conflict, but I caught the tail end of the Safe Routes to School discussion, which is why I was kind of here. I mean, all of this is of course a concern to me. But I would put like safety above all of this. And I know there's a lot of confusion and there are a lot of things going on and pieces to the puzzle here. But
Mhm.
I'm wondering, what can someone like me do to help somebody like you and other people in the town to kind of help in this safety and transportation and mobility issues throughout the town, aside from complain? You know?
Where do you live, Gina? What
I live
area
on-
do you?
I live near the high school.
Okay, thanks.
I have a
Mhm.
su- I have
Within
a
walking
suggestion.
distance to both the high school and to Alcott. And right now I've got we're walking to Alcott School, and it's a big issue.
Hmm.
Safety. Mhm.
Nick, yeah, usually in public comment, it's just kind of, we take comments and don't interact, but I think Nick has something to say and.
Yeah, I'd say
entertain
as a
him.
starter, what you did today, which is just attend these meetings as a good starting point.
Yeah.
Get to know
Yeah.
get to know what we're working on, see if there are areas you're comfortable contributing to or, guiding us or whatever. To me, that's the way I got started in town government stuff.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's a big step just to come to the meeting, hear what's going on and letting people know, because there are a lot of, I mean, one of our functions, I think, as a committee is to hear from the public and try to sort of coalesce inputs in order to help staff set priorities with their limited constrained resources.
Yeah.
And also, look for funding to do more ambitious things. Go ahead, Laura.
Two things. Gina, I think, did you submit a written comment to our committee? So the
Yeah.
first thing I'd say is I think you should share some of what you shared in that written comment here in this space, just so that you reiterate it for all of us, just in terms of your specific concerns about, I think it was, I forget which road you were talking about, but I think that when people, especially parents who are walking with their children, are highlighting the specific safety concerns that they're experiencing, I think that that's very valuable, both for committee members and for town staff. And then the second thing, I just forgot because my brain is not working today, but
Did
I'm sure
we-
it'll come to me.
Did we see that a few weeks ago when there was the discussion about the person who was killed on?
This is
Route
a
62?
comment that I received on October 10th.
Why don't you just circulate that to the committee, or
Yeah,
just
just
have it
send
send
to
it
the
to
committee. We'd love
Elizabeth to
to see it.
circulate to the committee?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
Okay.
meant to be.
So
Yeah.
go ahead. I don't know exactly what I had said in the I'd have to read it again in the email, but it's not just this is not just a concern for me and my child walking to school, but what I see living here is the number of tourists on foot, either parking at Crosby's or coming up from the train station to go to Walden Pond is, I mean, during the summer, you could look up the road and see 15 sets of people. The high school uses this loop for their track and their sports people. And it's enough that there's like footpath, on the narrow parts of the road, worn into people's, right of way in front of their homes. The town does not do a very good job about trimming the brush back and the poison ivy back. So it's on one side of the road entirely impossible unless you want a trip to the hospital for being covered heads and toe in poison ivy to get off the road. So I don't know how, I know a lot of from what I hear from the neighbors who are also aging in place. We've got 2 young families in the neighborhood, and then everybody else is definitely trying to stay in their homes, but they're at the age where it's starting to be difficult. They're afraid to go, leave not in their car and stuff. But I know a lot of this has in the past, from what I hear from them, has been about like the automobile traffic, which of course is an issue. But I don't know how the pedestrian part of this is measured and put in. But I don't know if somebody wants to like camp out on my front lawn. I don't like that's fine with me. Do you want me to count? I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm willing to help and do something. But in terms of like, this should be on the radar for not only like long term for TAC, but also I think for the 250 committee, because the number of people that go to downtown versus Walden Pond for the hike and stuff like that, it's not necessarily the same group of people. I think those are 2 separate demographics, just because of what you can get done in a day. So I just wanted to make sure that's on the radar, regarding schools and the 250 and other tourist pedestrian issues, I suppose.
Okay, well, again, I think it's really good, Gina, that you are here and telling us this. I think that if Laura, if you have a letter from Gina, you can send it, and Gina, if you have more information to put in a letter, you don't need to have counts or anything like that for us to listen. You just describe what you see as the challenges and the problems and we'll try to get, get this to the right people, including ourselves, of course. There's a traffic management group, that's the staff group, not a citizen volunteer group like this, that does deals with kind of critical, safety concerns at intersections or certain places, and sounds like some of it is appropriate to that. I'm in favor of us trying to find a kind of uniform process in the town to log the kind of public safety concern inputs that you're talking about, so that as larger projects are being considered, the information is there, and people can see, know who to ask for more information, who's actually using those corridors. There is a article, part of the budgeting for the next town meeting is and as it, depending how you state it, it sort of sounds sort of cryptic, but the asset management, but there's basically a big move to borrow $5 million a year over 5 years to bring the town's roads and sidewalks up to an acceptable and efficiently maintainable condition. And part of the a consulting contract that has just been started is to have this engineering side of the Stantec company look at asset management and possibly safety improvements on some key corridors in town. So getting this on the radar for TAC and for the traffic management group, the 250th, I think that's very appropriate. They have a lot of people working on public safety and transportation. So, start would be Laura sends the letter you already wrote. If you have another letter you want to send to us, you could do it through Elizabeth Hughes here, our staff, planning, the town planner. It's E Hughes, EHUGHES @concordma.gov. E. Hughes.
Okay,
Just as one word, and she'll get it out to all the TAC members, and I can make sure I get it to the traffic management group and
Yeah.
to the 250th transportation committee or whatever is handling that. And anyway,
Wonderful.
it's gonna, I think being here, showing up, like Nick said, is super important, and consistently engaging and getting more people to be engaged is important, because we don't have quick solutions, but these problems are real.
Yes, for sure. All right. I appreciate the response. I'll get some more information over, and I have done, I am in contact with Officer Holsinger, which I guess he's part of the traffic calming committee,
Management
whatever.
group, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
He-
So I have
yeah.
started that, and maybe I'll also ping the 250, and I don't know, maybe something I can do can bring you all together. And I know it's not going to happen overnight, but I wanted to make sure that this was on the radar, because somebody's definitely going to get hurt. It's not if, it's just when. It's a
Mhm.
lot. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks for
All right.
caring about it. Thanks for
Much
being-
appreciated. Okay, thanks.
Okay. Is there any other public comment? Okay, if, I will, close the meeting at 11:17, marathon meeting. Thank you very much, PAC members, for sticking with us.